thank you very much to Lucia and Jakob for their very interesting discussion. I think ending on a note that says that with the new identity solutions, publishers are going to be able to claw back some of the revenue from Facebook. I think is a very good conclusion and a very good transition to our panel now, which is features leading European publishers and sell-side platforms. So I would like to welcome our panelists. Maybe just start with a quick round of introduction. It's clockwise for my screen, which is probably different from your screens. We'll start with Sandra.
Thanks, Mathieu, for the invitation. My name is Sandra Saka. I'm Vice President of Azerion on the realm of platforms and partnerships. And Azerion, for the ones that doesn't know, is a ecosystem for advertising and consumers. So happy to join you.
Azerion is the new name that encompasses, or not so new anymore, but encompasses a bunch of platforms, including Improve Digital, which most people would know about, and a few others, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the past 3 years, we've acquired more than 30 companies. So there is a lot of assets in that, and the main purpose was really to build the ecosystem for advertisers and consumers. So there was a big arm on gaming. So we have a hat of being a publisher, as well as supply side platforms and bits and pieces of the demand side as well.
Great. So, well, thank you for being here, Sandra. Abdel, you're next on my clockwise round. So can you introduce yourself briefly?
Abdel Kader Majiji. I'm a Senior Vice President of Media Solutions. We are Germany's largest digital media sales house, and also traditional out-of-home and digital out-of-home. And furthermore, I'm a Managing Director of Yieldlove and Ströer SSP, which is our tech stack that we are developing ourselves in-house.
Yeah, so you're also similar to Sandra. You have the publishing element, but you also have the technology element, and so you understand the identity space with the technical aspects of it, right?
Exactly.
Great. Lauren, hello again. You're a regular guest on our events, but it's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm Lauren. I'm Director of Business Development across Mail Metro Media, which is Mail Online, metro.co.uk, and The Eye, some of the largest news sites across the world.
And well, welcome again. Good to have you again. And we have a new guest on an ID5 event, Javi.
Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for the invitation. I'm Xavi. I'm the Data Director and Programmatic at Prisa, the large newspaper in Spain.
And Prisa is the publisher of newspapers like El País.
El País, AS.
Yeah. And AS is the Real Madrid one, not the Barcelona one, right? I know there's a big fight between sports.
Actually, I'm from Barcelona, but I'm living in Madrid. So, you know, the discussion that we have here.
Okay, let's not talk about football then. Let's not talk about football. Let's talk about identity, because this is obviously the topic for today, or the topic for this year, or the topic for next year in the industry, right? It's been a very important part of the discussion. Obviously, we know that identity is key to advertising. We know that identity isn't really working very well for publishers or for users for that matter. The new kind of regulations in place, the new technical challenges related to cookies. So I'd like to maybe set the stage, right, and try to understand how you look at it from a publisher standpoint and what is at stake for you. How important is identity? What part of your revenue is tied to identity? How can we kind of understand the importance of that discussion?
I think that the evolution of our industry, whether it is driven by browser restricting third-party cookies or whether privacy laws, I think it actually is a unique opportunity for publishers to really focusing on honing their first-party data. So whether it is you're extending your customer profiles, whether it is with authenticated data, I do see that I think what you said is a way also for publishers to claw back some of the spend is going to the walled gardens. I think it's fantastic that you have identity solutions in place, and I think all these identity solutions will evolve. And with that as well, we'll give the power, back a little bit to publishers. So I do think that their first-party data will be their holy grail today and in the future. And I think also as a SSP side, we see this becoming more and more important, because the more, you're able to help also marketeers to understand their audiences. The better I think we will be in terms of the outsiders, the ones that are outside the walled gardens of our industry, to become much more successful, I think, in the future.
Yeah, I think this notion of kind of a programmatic hasn't necessarily worked well for publishers, and so the changes in identity are a way to kind of gain back some of the control. Do you agree with that? Maybe Xavi or Lauren, do you want to take this? Is this something that you relate to?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, as you say, programmatic reliance on the cookies has kind of been a default solution rather than necessarily something that we developed to as a way to best expose our data. So I don't think there's any question over publishers having a wealth of first-party data. It's just about how we reset and communicate that out. And that's where the kind of complexity layers we come to, where we have to ensure that that's across the SSPs, the DSPs, but ultimately we have to ensure that what we're passing out is something that our buyers want. And the complexity of the programmatic ecosystem makes it very difficult to say, well, this is what we have. Is this what you want to buy? Great, we can join those two things up together.
Right.
Xavi, would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think that probably the most important issue that we are facing, the publishers, it will be related to the open exchange. The vast majority of the revenue comes from the open exchange nowadays, and the advertisers used to work with a lot of third-party data to do the lookalikes. So with this deprecation of the third-party data, they are in trouble. So yeah. I think the most headache that will have the publishers is how we can monetize this inventory.
Yeah, and so obviously the more exposed you are to open exchange revenue, the more kind of challenging it's going to be. I think you probably have an interesting point of view on this as well, Abdel, because in Germany, Firefox is a much bigger portion of the market than it is in other markets. And so have you felt that challenge? You've been in a cookieless world on Safari for like a year already, right? So
exactly.
How does it feel? Tell us about the future.
That's something I wanted to point out. We can already see the future a little bit on starting there at the sky. And you're totally right. We've been hit very hard by Firefox, especially via Square. We do have the biggest portal in Germany, which is T-Online, which a little bit of elder people going to it. And we had a big chunk of Firefox users on it. And late last year, when Firefox started to block third-party cookies, we could see what's happening. At the beginning, we lost around about 70% of the eCPM, which is a very, very hard drop. But on the other side, we can also see what happened in the last 12 months on our side and as well on the side of the ecosystem. At that point of time last year, no DSP was able to do something like predictive frequency capping and so forth to enable buying of cookies, cookieless inventory. This has now changed just within a couple of months. So all of the major DSPs are now able to do that. They are able to buy inventory without cookies, at least for branding campaigns and so forth. And what we also can see that many initiatives have involved to provide contextual-based targeting. And furthermore, what we did is we prepared a little bit for this cookieless environment, as we could see that Firefox is going to do it. And we've been luckily able to develop our own real-time prediction algorithms. So what we are able to do then is we are able within the IO-driven business, but also with the programmatic business, to provide targeting even for cookieless inventory by having pre-targeted deals based on our own targeting technology. We can do that still because we have 50% of the inventory with identifiers, whether it is Chrome or whether it's mobile. And that's enough to have very good data to have then real-time targeting algorithms in place that do predict age, sex, and behavior based just on the environment and the HTTP information you can collect. And that's maybe a little bit also what the future is going to go to. So have many different solutions to re-identify users by combining context-based informations, by having a first-party strategy, like having first-party cookies, working with ID5, which has also very good solutions. We have implemented this year, and it works great for us. Furthermore, to have an identity strategy in place, how to re-identify users based on logins, and then you have then those different solutions in the market which are popping up right now. That idea again started very, very early in Germany because we have this Firefox issue, so we talked about it a little bit earlier, but also the other initiatives, LiveRamp, ID5 with its user file. Unified.
Okay, we'll come back to those solutions. I think I'd like to understand. So you said, you know, you've been working on like modeling profiles so that you can understand from the user that you can identify who are the users that you cannot identify. There are first-party data projects. There are you know, contextual targeting strategies. Lauren, maybe can you tell us a little bit about, like, you haven't seen the future yet, like Strohe has, right? But you're prepared already. But you've seen
we have a huge portion of Safari. We see a huge portion of our imagery across Safari.
Yeah, true.
So we do see exactly what you've mentioned in terms of the impact that that has to yields. And obviously, again, I think, I can't remember who mentioned this, but where there's a reliance on the open RTB space, our scale, there's an obvious reliance on the open RTB space. So we definitely feel the impact of not having the same cookie and not having the same identity and the ability to target across those environments. The only thing that I would kind of add to that is, whilst this, like at the moment, it feels like this is a huge issue for publishers. And what the bit that's almost kind of been missed in translation is, whilst the DSPs can now offer these solutions, and there are lots of different ways that we can test, and there's lots of strategies in place to test different buying, we haven't necessarily seen this huge shift in how buyers actually buying in that way. So it's very difficult to say, oh, well, this has worked, these are the solutions, this is the silver bullet answer, because it is still a process that we're working through to kind of establish, well, what will work, what will be most valuable. And so context is great. It's one solution, and it's something that we are working on. So we create a first party profile for every user on our site in local storage when they land on our site, and we use that to then profile. We are also working, so that gives us kind of a contextual, we base our audiences on the behaviors they demonstrate on our site, and the interactions with different elements of that. So it could be a mortgage calculator, it could be a poll where they give us they give us more information. So there's lots of different ways that we collect that. And then from so that's great. We can have all this data. And as I said, I don't think that the challenge here is publishers having first party data. We absolutely have a wealth of it. It's then how we expose that. So one of the things that we're working on in the context space is standardizing that. So again, I think Xavi mentioned the third-party data being one of the kind of big chunks of the discrepancy in how buyers are using it and we saw that in the ISPA study, where there's this huge drop-off, like 10 to 18% on just, sorry, my hand flailing around the screen, 10 to 18% drop-off in just that third-party data costs, depending on kind of who you are, which buyer, which DSP you're using. So I think there's a massive kind of thing to address there. One of the things and the other part of the study was that there's no standardization. It's very difficult for this to look, it doesn't look uniform across the whole ecosystem. So we're working on kind of how can we standardize that in the UK. That's to the IAB. The same would be true in IAB Europe or different iterations of that.
Yeah, it's the what they call it, the data label, right? The nutrition label for data. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So we can do that right now. We can do that within a deal. But what we're looking at is how can we surface that using something like Prebid user ID module and have that as a fixed module that we sit that contextual segment within. So in the exact same way as the identity solutions are using those kind of existing frameworks, those existing modules, can we put contextual into that? And again, it doesn't work if we do it on our own. We want more publishers to adopt this. And that's why we're working to the frameworks that already exist across the architecture of OpenRTB.
Yeah. And I think that's a very good point, that the publisher collaboration is going to be a key element of us moving forward as an industry, whether it's on contextual kind of audience definitions, whether it's on identity adoption, all those things, right? They require mass adoption on the publisher side. How are you approaching this, Xavi? I think there's a big project in Spain around premium publishers. Is this part of that kind of strategy of like getting together to be stronger?
Yeah, I cannot talk because I'm not involved at 100% of the project. Okay. But yeah, it's called WIMAS. So it's a marketplace of publishers, and logically they're with conversations right now. We are in conversations in order to collaborate all the publishers that are involved in order to create this unique identifier or whatever, because at the end you need to sell these audiences in a scalable solution. So you cannot just being each of us like a silos, because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think again that's a common trait, right? In Germany, you mentioned NetID, which is also publisher driven. I mean, there's everywhere kind of premium publisher, legitimate publishers are getting together to kind of bring more scale and more uniformity into their solutions. Maybe just coming back with you, Xavi, again on the types of solutions, right? First party data, contextual targeting. Like, how are you approaching this? What are the types of projects that you've?
Well, I think that Lauren said correctly. We are working in the same. I think that all publishers are involved in APC as well. So all the publishers are working in the same direction. So the topics that we are discussing in this environment, so it's contextual. Basically, one of them, we are testing different solutions in contextual different partners to see how it works. And the other way is like we are developing projects on propensity of clickings and all this stuff in order to provide more information about and quality of the first party data to help our advertisers. Another one that I'm really pushing hard, and I'm a strong believer on just providing to the advertiser, because I'm coming from the buy side, from Group M 3 years ago. So it's providing insights. So we have first party data. We know our users, we know our readers, what they are doing. So you can provide really good insights if you know how to work with these users. So we are using different solutions of social login, and we can provide some information and building buyer personas when they are working with branded content solutions, instead of just focusing only on monetization of the traffic, because with these marketplaces, their focus is monetize the traffic. So as a publisher, we need to focus on something that provide more add value to our advertisers.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point around the insights. Like, how can we influence further up the funnel rather than it just being on that kind of like last bid, this is the price for the single impression. And the closer that the publisher can get to those types of buying decisions, then the more powerful and the more valuable our inventory becomes, rather than just being something that's picked up across programmatic. Yeah,
you're right. This is the key point. So at the end, imagine like Prisa, that we have a lot of different, as Matthew said, that a lot of different newspapers like El País, Prisa. We have the radio, we have 40 Principales, wherever. So one of my obsessions is to create a customer journey around our network. So you can provide to our advertisers, like you can hit the different this user in different sites in one day. So this is the idea. It's like working in more quality data than instead just having third-party data or first-party data just to hitting one ad impression.
And actually, COVID and this year has been a great, almost like a think tank for that, in that everyone's behaviors have changed so vastly in terms of we can't rely on commuting patterns, we can't rely on kind of anything we knew to be true from media planning. So there's been quite a reset in kind of the agency landscape in how do we actually think about these users? What are they doing? What behaviors have changed? How do we then go to our publishers and media owner partners, whether that's digital, TV, etc., and understand exactly what behaviors they've seen change and reflect that into our planning. So it's almost been a bit of a gift to say, actually, those insights become all the more crucial. And how do you then follow that through to your campaign activations?
Yeah, correct.
Looking at the glass half empty there.
No, half full.
Sorry, half full. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that there are different ways and different methods for publishers to kind of bring back some of that control, some of that influence over buyers, right? Let's go back to identity in particular for just a second and talk about user authentication, because this has been touted as like, okay, we're going to go away from using cookies, but like everybody's going to give email addresses and we'll be fine. I think we've got two panelists here that are in a probably fortunate position. Sandra, you with all of the gaming environments, you probably have more logged in users than the average publisher. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, definitely. So there is a mix of users, consumers that goes to our in-app games, and as well casual games with more, let's say, 5 minutes game. And those ones we are not really having or asking them to sign on, which is we are now brainstorming on how can we start authenticating those users and be able to have, you know, CRM data from those guys. But, you know, for the nature of the business and of the content, you know, all the in-app consumers, we have their logins, and we have already been nurturing that, you know, ways to get more, you know, insights, like as Javi and Lauren was saying, is like this understanding, like, okay, behavior-wise, right? How can we associate this type of, you know, CRM data to behavior, contextual, and so on across our properties? But definitely this happens, and on the ones that we are not, you know, really collecting or asking them to do the authentication, we are trying to understand more and more and doing A/B tests with advertisers to understand their behaviors. But I think the authentication itself, it's not only addressing or helping, you know, us augmenting our first-party data, but it's very in line with, you know, the consent mechanisms, right? So we are keeping the dialogue with consumers and the publishers is still on, meaning, listen, we will collect your, you know, email address, right? You're going to have whether personalized advertising or, you know, XYZ, but there is a trade-off, and this dialogue, I think it's super important for our industry. We talk about transparency for the whole chain, from the marketeer until the publisher, but we also need to include the consumer as part of this, you know, helping us to find the solutions to it. I think if we don't bring them more and more to the dialogue, I think we will miss a big part of the solution that we are trying to tackle here.
I do agree. Oh, sorry. I do agree, but I also think that consumers have almost got to the point of, we live and breathe this every day, but there's so much stuff. Even if you just look on Twitter, there's so much stuff around, like, just what can I do? Who can I give my email to never have to see these cookie banners again? So there's almost a backlash coming from that. I'm like, great, if you want to give your emails, we'll take it.
The thing that I think right now is super overwhelming, right? That is like, exactly, everybody just like, oh, accepted. But you're right. I think that the user experience is something it's super challenging because any piece of content there will be, you know, okay, accepted, or but you're right. But again, this is part of, I think, the evolution, right? We'll need to find a fine tuning between all of these parties to have this dialogue open, but not crowded the whole experience.
Abdel, with T-Online, obviously you have a huge user logged in base, right? That's with all of the, T-Online has a webmail service, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct, but we are a little bit in a special situation because we are running the portal T-Online, but the email service still belongs to German Telekom. So which means that the logins do belong to German Telekom.
Okay.
But even so, maybe you have written the announcement. So German Telekom is taking part into the NetID initiative now. So this means that all the logins on T-Online is going to be supported by the NetID. And that's fortunately something that's going to help us, because in that case, we will have NetID-based logins and then NetID-based identities on our biggest portal.
Okay. And how many, what percentage of your user do you expect to be logged in? Do you have an idea already? Do you think it's going to be 20%, 50%, 80%?
Honestly, across our portfolio, and I guess that's the case for most publishers, if they don't have a login-based business model, we do not have logins at today. So for T-Online, it's just due to the email service, and that's why that's going to be a big challenge. But if you just take a look, a couple of years ago, we discussed about having content layers on our websites, and everybody was saying, okay, we are going to be ruined if we start to implement them. And now, a couple of years later, Germany was, yes, I know, the last country to switch to content banners, but we did it, and finally it's working. So the market in Germany has switched. We have roughly content traffic rates of around about 85%. The business is still there. We can see that the consented traffic has now slightly higher eCPMs, and the unconsented traffic is going to de-evaluate. And maybe that's a little bit then the future that is going to go to. In the past, it was not valuable for us to have for publishers to have a login on their websites. If I can't identify the users anymore, if we see a drop in 70% of all our inventory, I guess it's going to change. then it might be more valuable to have a login to lose a couple of percentages of your inventory due to users that do not want to log in, but then to get the identity of the others and to recover inventories. And at that point of time, I guess inventory is going to be more valuable if it's identifiable. But I totally agree with the others that we need to show this with the consumers to give them an idea why they do that. It's a moment what pops up in Germany very popular is these options to provide a payment service to read content or otherwise to provide content for using cookies and using personalized data. That could be enhanced to an option that says, yeah, you can read the content by payment without any tracking, without any logins and anything else, or you provide us your email address and give us consent to use it. Then that's value exchange and everybody can decide. And what we already can see, then the understanding of why this advertising is necessary becomes much, much more feasible for the users to understand, okay, why they are providing us that information, why do they grant us access, because they know otherwise they need to pay for it.
Yeah, and this implicit value exchange that we've had for 20 years, right, whereby you go to a website and you access the website for free and you don't even ask the question. This is going away, right? Are you seeing that as well, Xavi? Is there a new relationship with customers?
We are completely involved right now on this. So we have the differentiation about the registered user and the subscribers. So we just raise the paywall. So we are getting more valuable information, but then from our side, and it's in my area right now to find the right solution, the right advertising solution for these subscribed advertisers to find the balance. Like, well, we need to push or not. So at the end, you are getting more valuable first-party data, but you cannot target with advertising because at the end, the editor wants to keep this completely safe for this advertiser. They already paying to see a clean website. No? It's difficult. And then you have the register that it's only an email. So right now, probably for identifiers, it's okay. But 1 year ago, just having only the email, it's nothing because at the end, you know who are behind this email.
Yeah, and yeah, as you say, it's I mean, we have to manage the different levels of interactions, right? There will be a free experience with kind of consent or email. There'll be a paying experience. Will have maybe less advertising. I mean, today if you buy the paper, you pay for the paper, and there are ads, right? And like tomorrow,
but
we'll probably have
on
the
online
same
environment, it's completely different. I think that
you think
the reader don't see it like this. You know, it's like
okay.
But I think it's exactly that. I think, Javi, that's exactly it. It's taken for granted that the good content is always free, and you know, and advertising is there exactly to promote it free. So by the time that there is a less restricted advertising, then okay, there's a value of the content. You know, publishers have the whole chain of editors, you know, servers to really host that content. So I think now we say, hey, listen, you wanted this good content, sure. Then this is a little bit of the contribution for having that. So I think it adjusts also the value added to. It's not free for free. That's why there is advertising. So you pay for good content. Now, if you don't want to have that, fantastic. But then there's an exchange of whether your email, whether it is a subscription fee. But I think this is a great actually evolution of. Setting the stage of this is not a free content world. It's someone is paying the bill.
Yeah, and it will also recreate like the value pyramid, right? The good content, the one that deserves to be paid for because it's quality, it's valuable, people want to read it.
Yep.
will be better qualified, better identified, versus the kind of the long tail kind of lower level content, which will not be able to command this kind of relationship with customers. Lauren, how are you approaching this kind of new logged in registered universe? You say people are happy to give you an email address if they don't see the cookie banners anymore. Is that what you're experiencing, or?
Oh no, that was just I was just saying speculative.
Oh, okay.
You see that the consumer angle and the opinion on it is so vastly different to some of the conversations that we're having, and in these sorts of groups where we try and kind of like what we think is true is just not necessarily at all reflective of consumer thinking and behavior. We're testing lots of strategies. So we we have such scale that we don't ever expect to have 100% logged in base, and neither is that really our strategy. So we do have a logged in base, and they are our super users. But we have kind of various strategies. So it's finding that kind of point of, is it a tiered system? Is it paywalls? Is it a certain amount for free, or is it then a reduced ad experience? And I don't have the silver bullet answer for that yet. These are just all things that we are testing, and it entirely depends on the user and the market and the type of content that we are making kind of available to them versus what's behind that. Like it's there's so many variables to it.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of things you're doing already for to kind of increase the value of your traffic, of your audiences, of your content, even with, without the kind of the traditional identification methods. And then there's a lot of people like us, right, who are coming to you guys and who are offering ways of doing things. I guess my question is, how are you looking at this new industry that's developing, this new market? There's different types of organization. There are the IEB is kind of leading a working group. There are associations like NetID in Germany. There are established ad tech vendors, right, like the Trade Desk or LiveRamp, who come up with like their own ID being kind of shared as a universal ID. There are obviously independents like ID5. Do you have identity fatigue yet? Is there too many solutions? Is it too complicated already? Or how are you approaching this? What are you testing? What do you think you need as publishers to help you on that journey? Who wants to start there? That's a tricky question. Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I don't think that I don't think the goal is to end up with a single solution, and I don't think that we will. I think that as an industry, we do like to overcomplicate things. So of course we have gone with lots of different solutions. But the real challenge here is, as a publisher, we can say, great, we'll be agnostic, we'll work with everyone. And we kind of have to, because the vendors and the vendors, by that I mean, I don't mean vendors, I mean the clients, the actual advertisers. There's such an array of data maturity. Like if you have a contractual relationship and you have someone's email and they sign up to a service from you and you provide their TV, then great, you have a really clear understanding of who your users are. You have all of their contact details. You know exactly what you want to do to upsell them. If you are someone P&G who sells shampoo through another retailer, you don't necessarily have that interaction with your end client. So you have a very different set of data that you are and a different understanding of your end consumer. It's not necessarily that you have their email, but you understand their profile and what makes them tick and why they buy from you. And those two, that to me highlights we won't ever get to a point where one identity solution will be fit for purpose across all, because the brands don't have the data. Neither do they have the profiling or the capacity to buy against one type of data, one type of identity solution. So I definitely don't think it will get, it's complicated because it's such an array of buying and motivating factors for the consumers that brands use today.
Yeah, and there's a lot of applications of identity where we talk about targeting, obviously, all the time, but there's a lot of issues with frequency capping. There's a lot of issues with measurement and attribution. Sandra, when you put your ad tech hat on, how are you looking at this from a technical standpoint? How are you kind of approaching the space? What type of initiatives are you supporting or encouraging? What's your strategy?
I think actually, I think it's great that there are so many solutions. And I think our market, our industry is fragmented, right? So I think the overcomplications, because this is our reality. So, and I believe that having multiple solutions is it's great, because it will foment this discussion, this conversation we're having today, and it will evolve, right? We don't know what actually will work or not when these start when third-party cookies will be restricted. But on our end, I think we are open for testing all the solutions that are there. I think if we're able to, stitch, the right audience to your brand or advertising in the end of the day, this is our main goal as a technology provider and as well as a publisher. So if this means that we need to test, ID5, LiveRent now with the trade desk, and any other new solutions that are coming on our way, absolutely, I think it's needed because we will learn with it, and we're going to see this is adding, this is not, and we'll be able to maybe with partnering up with different solutions, be much more, let's say, powerful. Again, I think going back to how you started the session, Matthew, it's super important that this is also a consequence for all the walled garden. No? So the reason that we are all now having all these new identity solutions is being pushed by that. And let's say the outsiders, we have a huge power on it. So I think it's great that there are a lot of solutions. And I think here on our side, we are willing to test and see what works and contribute with feedback and information and insights to make it better.
Okay, Xavi, you said you're kind of starting this journey. You're looking at strategies. You're kind of planning the next steps. What are the things that you're concerned about, or are there like types of organization? I don't want names, obviously, but like
no.
You know, would you rather work with a nonprofit, with an industry body, with a commercial company that is like focused on like what are the things that you're kind of looking forward to or not looking forward to in the way this market is shaping up?
Yeah, for me, it's what Lawrence and Sandra said. Is like it's a complex industry. There's a rise up of a lot of solutions right now, so it's a little bit a mess. And even we are professionals on this, so and we are involved in a day-to-day basis. But each of different solutions, like you and the other ones, you are providing the best solution, the best connection. So in my side, we are really conservative at this point. So we didn't start yet to testing. Logically, it's like Lawrence said, we wouldn't only stay with one or tied to only with one solution, but we don't want to have 20 solutions with 20 peaks or whatever or synchronizations, because at the end is what I said into my role, no? Like it will be an ID matching at the end, because at the end it's like, well, I'm with this advertiser, the other advertiser have another solution. So it's really complex. It's really complex. I don't know if there are too many solutions or not. Logically, each of you guys who are trying to provide the best solution to help the industry on this, but it's tough. It's tough to understand, to decide which is the best solution, because at the end our bosses there say, okay, but you need to decide which is the best solution, the best option. You say, I don't know yet what will happen with this and if it's working or not.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we've been trying to kind of manage expectations a lot, because we've been on this journey for 3 years now. So it's important to understand that it's a collective migration into a new way of doing things, and so it cannot happen like this. And it's not like, put something on, boom, all of a sudden you see the results, right? Because it means that, well, you guys, publishers, have to adopt kind of new ways of doing things, but then the entire technical ecosystem needs to support it. The buyers, like you were saying earlier, right? They've been very much sitting on the sidelines for now. They've been looking at what's happening. They've been looking at supply building, and only now are they getting involved and are they participating. And you need all of those pieces to be on board, right? For new ways of doing things to be usable.
Today I was reading in the Spanish, this tech news, whatever, that there is one of these providers that arrived to a new agreement, just connecting different solutions, and it's like everybody's connecting everything, and there is a lot of marketing efforts. Like, wow, so I need to take this because they have these connections, but then you read the other one, no? So it's crazy to understand.
And it's complicated to understand from a technical standpoint, complicated to understand from a market dynamic standpoint. Abdel, maybe you're probably a bit ahead, because you've, as you said, right, you felt the pain from Firefox for a while, and you've integrated with us and others as well at the same time. Do you have any feedback on this? Do you have any, like, do you already have like a learning curve or experience that you can share?
So I can share what our idea is on it. So the market is now at the moment in a very early stage, which means there are a couple of ideas. And furthermore, online tech was already very dynamic. But in these days, it has even become more dynamic as it was in the past. So we have all these technology changes by browser developers, by the mobile ecosystems, iOS, Android, with restrictions to their identities. And furthermore, even the legislation part is not finished with the GDPR. There's more to come. There are more stuff at the moment discussed in Brussels. I took part last week in a panel, and they're discussing to totally disallow personalized advertising. So, and these are the topics that we have to take in mind within our strategies. And from that point of view, I would agree that it makes sense to have, if you compare it to the stock market, am I betting now on one stock, or am I going for a portfolio strategy? I would recommend to go for a portfolio strategy, because at the moment there's a lot of risk involved, and we do not know which is the best technology to involve in the next 2 or 3 years. And another point would be, I would not agree that having one single solution would be the best for the market. Whether it is a private held company or whether it is a federated solution, it's always going to be a monopolist for identity. So if you ask me personally, I would prefer to have 2 or 3 solutions, which will be the major ones, which will have connections to each other. But I agree with Javier, we don't need 20 or 200, because that's going to be too much. And I guess that's where the future is going towards. And that's something that the publishers have to prepare for. And I guess for the panelists today, this is something which can be tackled, because all of us, we are huge enough. We do have the resources to test and to involve different identity solutions, to prepare our wrappers and to optimize them. But it's going to be hard for the small guys, for the small publishers. I guess those will need a partner to tackle this issue, because they won't be big enough to have the value exchange with logins. They will need a technical solution that they can just rely on, and they should start to think about with whom to go.
Yeah, fully agree with this. I think, I mean, I like your stock portfolio analogy. The analogy we're often using is that of currencies, right? There are hundreds of currencies in the world, but if you want to trade with anybody in the world, if you support dollars, euros, and yen, you can probably trade with anyone, right? Because everybody will have some sort of parity with those kind of major currencies. And so the way we're looking at the market is ID5 will be one of those kind of major currency that allows trading with everybody else, and we'll have fixed exchange rates, if you want to continue the metaphor, between those kind of major currencies. I see you hopping with your head, so I guess you agree with this. Okay, yes. We're almost out of time, but I just wanted to kind of come back to the goals, right? What do you expect from a company like ID5? There are several things that we can help you do. We can help you monetize better. We can help you protect your data better. We can help you be more kind of compliant with privacy and kind of regulations. We can provide a lot of transparency on who's using what. What are the key kind of drivers of decision, the key kind of values you're looking for when you evaluate identity solutions, and what is the number one goal we should keep in mind? What would you say if you had a choice of those 4? Xavi, you want to go first?
Well, yeah. For me, the key point is monetization. Logically, and it's like what everybody's looking for.
Absolutely.
Secondly, I think that it's transparency. I think the market needs transparency. So at the end, you want to know exactly where is coming this flow, this money, and who are using this, and if this solution is providing you the correct advertisers, and if they're using or not. And then I think it's privacy, compliance, and data protection. Logically, I think the cost is the less one. I will say in my point of view, based on these ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that data protection, privacy, compliance, that's a baseline. Well, that's not something that we're going to evaluate on. We need that from any vendor. Yeah. So from and then transparency more and more is becoming, I don't want to say a buzzword, but it's becoming much more of a standard practice. So the only real metric there is monetization. Do we expect this to drive an increase in our yield? Yeah, absolutely. And the rest is an it's not
basic,
a nice to have, it's a need to have.
You have to check that box to be in contention.
Exactly. I expect my DPO will not see this. If not, he will kill me.
Sandra, would you agree?
It's like Matthew, the answer is like all the above, like all the options. And I think, of course, it's the monetization. I think it's the critical part that we see that there's a potential loss. So yeah, all of the above and definitely monetization.
Abdel, you agree?
Totally
it's all about the money.
The first 3 tick boxes, we are publishers in this business. First, it is monetization, monetization, monetization. Then, yes, I agree. Going with laws and having a transparency is a baseline. And then differentiators could be how complex is the technology, how reliable, because obviously if it's the base of my monetization, then it needs to be reliable too. But that's also the case when it is good for monetization, because that means it's always on.
Great. Well, thank you very much for this. I think it's, I mean, you know, we know what's at stake here, right? It's the continuity of the advertising-based business model, the open web, access to information, access to services, and it has a cost. And so identity must be here to monetize those services so that it can be sustained by advertising. So I think that's a very good conclusion. Thank you very much to all 4 of you for your time and for your very interesting insights. It was a real pleasure to have you. And we're gonna transition actually to the topic of monetization with a business case from a publishing group called Webedia, who's been working with PubStack, a sell-side analytics company, to understand the impact of identity on monetization. So we're exactly in the topic, and obviously you guys stick around with us to understand what they've measured and how we can take this as a positive next step for the future of identity and digital advertising. Thank you again for your time. It was a pleasure to have you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. Bye.